You don't notice the moment love starts to fade. It doesn't shout. It doesn't slam doors or throw things across the room. No, it slips away and whispers and pauses, slow, silent shifts. I think I started noticing it months before that night, but I convinced myself I was imagining it. You tell yourself things like, she's just tired, or we've both been busy. And then one night it happens in a way so subtle, yet so final, that you feel it like a punch to the chest. It was a friend's birthday, not a close friend of mine, more like someone Dana used to work with, but she wanted to go. And I didn't want to be the husband who makes excuses. So I went. New blazer, fresh shave, even polished my boots. I remember catching her eye just before we left the house and smiling, but she barely looked at me. She was already checking her phone, her lipstick, her hair. I didn't say anything. I never do in those moments. I just swallow the feeling and move on. The party was being held at a cozy venue on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, but packed with people, music, laughter. The kind of place where everyone knew someone and everyone pretended they didn't notice how awkward reunions can be. I stood by the bar sipping a soda, watching Dana glide through the crowd like she belonged there, like she was someone else. She looked stunning, I won't lie. Everyone noticed, especially him. He was tall, easygoing, with that practiced charm that made women lean in and laugh just a little too hard. I didn't recognize him, but Dana did. Oh, she definitely did. I watched her face light up when she saw him. She touched his arm the way you do when you're trying to act casual, but the gesture lingers a second too long. They laughed. She laughed. That laugh she used to save for me. For a while, I just stood there watching them from across the room, telling myself I was overreacting. Maybe it was just an old friend. Maybe it meant nothing. But then the music shifted. A slow, soulful song came on, one of those tracks that turns the whole room into silhouettes. People started pairing off. I looked over at her. She didn't even glance at me. She reached for his hand without hesitation. They danced, right there in the center of the floor under strings of soft golden lights. And the way she looked at him, it broke something in me. She didn't scan the room for me, didn't notice I was watching. Her smile never dimmed, her hand on his shoulder, her head tipping closer, as if I didn't exist. As if 12 years of shared life, of memories, of promises meant nothing in that moment. I stood there frozen like an afterthought in my own life. Something inside me went quiet. I didn't make a scene. I didn't storm out. I didn't even say goodbye. I just set my glass down gently, buttoned my jacket, and walked out into the night air. My breath catching like I'd run a mile. My car was parked around the corner, far enough to make the walk feel longer. I don't remember the drive home. I just remember the silence. Loud, thick, joking silence. And in that silence, I knew something had ended. Not the marriage, not yet, but something. Somewhere between that song and the way she held his gaze, I had disappeared. And she didn't even notice. But what she didn't know, what she would realize far too late, was that the second I left that room, something shifted, not just in her, but in me. And the regret, oh, it came quickly, much quicker than she thought it would. There's something strange about walking away while your body is still in the room. That night I didn't physically leave until much later, but mentally, emotionally, I think I disappeared right there on the edge of that dance floor. Watching Dana sway with him, her shoulders relaxed in a way they hadn't been around me in months. I felt like I had become part of the wallpaper, a quiet man in the corner, a shadow holding a drink. The worst part? No one even noticed. You know that awkward moment when someone tries to wave at a friend only to realize the friend is waving at someone behind them? It's embarrassing. But what I felt was colder than that. I wasn't just misreading something. I wasn't in her periphery. I wasn't even in her awareness. Not once, not during the entire 3 songs they danced to, did she look over to check if I was okay, if I was still there. People often ask when a marriage ends, expecting a date, a fight, or an affair. But I think for some of us, it ends with neglect, so quiet, it almost feels polite. You think you're being mature by not making a scene, but deep down, there's a voice whispering, "She doesn't see you anymore." I stepped outside to get some air. The cool breeze felt better than I expected. It was one of those nights where the sky is too clear to be real, like a painted backdrop for someone else's life. I could still hear the bass line of the music pulsing through the ground. I checked my phone out of habit. No messages, no missed calls. Just one photo I hadn't seen before. Dana in the mirror, earlier that evening, taking a selfie in the dress she bought last week. She never sent it to me. I must have accidentally opened her photo gallery yesterday while helping her find something on her phone. Strange how small details start to feel heavy once they connect. I sat on the bench near the parking lot, not sure if I was waiting for something or just delaying the moment I'd have to return inside and pretend like everything was fine. A couple passed by laughing. A younger guy leaned into a woman and told her she looked like she walked out of a dream. She laughed, pulling him closer, and I realized I hadn't said anything like that to Dana in I don't even know how long. Had I stopped, or had she stopped hearing it? That's the part that haunts me. Maybe we both quit quietly at different speeds. After 20 minutes or so, I went back in. The party had shifted. People were looser, louder, more chaotic now. Dana was at the bar with him, leaning in close, laughing at something he said while holding her drink with 2 hands like she used to do on our first dates. I stood right behind her for a full 10 seconds. She didn't turn around. I didn't interrupt. I didn't tap her shoulder. I just watched. And then I did something I never imagined myself doing. I left. Not in anger, not in despair. I left the way someone walks away from an apartment they've outgrown. Quiet, aware, heart beating just a little faster than it should. I drove. I didn't even know where I was going. I just kept moving. It wasn't until I reached a small gas station 20 meters out of town that my phone buzzed. It was her. A single message. "Where are you?" She noticed, but only after the music stopped. I didn't answer her message, not because I was trying to prove a point, not because I was angry. The truth is, I just didn't know what to say. "Where are you?" Felt like a question meant for someone who had a destination. I didn't. I was parked near an old, closed-down antique store off Highway 7. Headlights still on, music low. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't planning. I was just existing. Somewhere between being her husband and being a man she used to know. That space, it's where I lived for hours. I replayed the dance in my mind more times than I'd like to admit. Not because of jealousy, but because of how comfortable she looked. The way her body leaned into is like it had done it before. The way her smile reached her eyes, not the practice smile she gave relatives or coworkers, but the one I hadn't seen in years. And here's the part one still can't wrap my head around. She never lied to me. Not once. No suspicious texts, no late-night phone calls, no excuses about working late or weekends with the girls. There was no obvious betrayal, no hidden affair I could point to and say, that's the moment you crossed the line. And yet something was still broken. I think that's what made it worse. It was the slow erosion, the misuches, the declining eye contact, the I'm just tired, that stretched into months. We stopped laughing at the same jokes. We stopped finishing each other's stories. We started living parallel lives under one roof. Close, but never quite intersecting. And the dance, it just made it real. My phone buzzed again, another message. Are you okay? I stared at those 3 words longer than I should have because they weren't words of love. They weren't words of fear. They were words of image management. A wife realizing that maybe, just maybe, her husband walking out without a word would raise questions she wasn't ready to answer. I didn't reply, but I did drive home. Not for her, not to argue, not to talk. I just wanted to see what it felt like to walk through our front door and not feel anything at all. I pulled into the driveway just after midnight, porch light on, curtains drawn, nothing out of place. And that was exactly the problem. The house looked the same way it always had, but I didn't. Something inside me had shifted, like the ground beneath me had moved half an inch to the left while no one else noticed. And as I sat in the car staring at the front door I'd unlocked thousands of times, I felt like a guest in my own life. She wasn't asleep. I could tell by the shadow behind the living room curtain, still quiet, waiting. That shadow used to be something comforting. Now it felt like a stranger listening for footsteps. I walked in and closed the door softly behind me. Dana stood near the fireplace, still in that same dress. She had changed her earrings, though. Funny. The things you notice when you're no longer part of someone's orbit. She opened her mouth like she was about to say something, but hesitated. I could see her scanning my face for clues, anger, disgust, coldness. But I didn't give her anything. I didn't have anything left to give. I didn't know you left, she said finally, her voice low but controlled. I nodded once. I figured. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was surgical, sharp, precise, and cutting things we never meant to lose. She sat down on the edge of the couch, fingers clasped tight in her lap. I stayed standing, leaning against the archway like I needed something solid to hold me up. I wasn't trying to. I mean, I don't need an explanation. I interrupted, not unkindly. I'm not accusing you of anything. That threw her off more than I expected. Maybe she was preparing for a fight for me to shout her storm out again. But I wasn't angry. I was tired. Profoundly tired of being the only one who felt the weight of something breaking. I saw how you looked at him, I added. That did it. Her breath caught just slightly. Her eyes dropped to her lap like they couldn't carry the weight of mine. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said, almost a whisper. You didn't, I replied, and I meant it. You can't hurt someone you've stopped reaching for. The words landed between us like a box neither of us wanted to open. I didn't plan to say them, they just fell out. She blinked hard once, then again, but she didn't cry. She's never been one to cry when it matters. I went upstairs without saying goodnight. She didn't follow. That night, I lay in bed listening to the heater click and hum like always, but it felt like the house was holding its breath. She never came up. I didn't go down. The bedroom was too quiet for sleep and too familiar to feel safe. When the sun started bleeding through the blinds hours later, I still hadn't closed my eyes. And in that dim morning glow, I realized I was dreading something I couldn't name. Not a confrontation, not the end of our marriage, but the moment she'd start pretending again, offering me coffee like nothing happened, asking what I wanted for dinner, maybe even smiling, because that would be the moment I'd know that she could live with this. And I couldn't. I heard her moving around downstairs before the sun had even finished rising. She always moves gently in the morning, careful not to wake me. It used to feel sweet, Now it felt calculated, like she wanted to be gone before we had to make eye contact in the daylight. I stayed in bed, not because I was tired. I just didn't want to go back to pretending. At 7:03, she tapped on the door. Not knocked, just tapped, like she was testing how fragile the surface was. "I made coffee," she said soft. I didn't answer. She waited a second, maybe two, then went back downstairs. That was her way of apologizing. Dana didn't do big gestures. She did breakfast. She did grocery lists. She texted a check-in emoji midday instead of saying, "I'm sorry," if I had walked down, taken a sip of coffee, and made a passing comment about the weather. We both would have agreed without words to bury the night before. But I didn't go down. I stared at the ceiling fan slowly spinning above me and thought about how strange it was that I could feel this distant from someone sitting less than 30 feet away. That was the part one hadn't prepared for. The silence between us used to be comfortable. Now it felt like a chess game where neither of us wanted to make the first move because we knew it wouldn't matter. At 8:11, she texted me from the kitchen. "Are we okay?" It wasn't even a full sentence. No punctuation, just 3 words that sounded like they were afraid to find out the answer. I didn't respond. Not because I was being cold. I just didn't know what she meant by okay. Did she mean, is the house still standing? Are we still married on paper? Or did she mean something deeper? Because if she meant emotionally okay, spiritually okay, soul deep okay, then no, we weren't. I eventually got up, showered, dressed. When I walked into the kitchen, she looked up quickly like she wasn't expecting me to actually appear. She had already washed the 2 mucks. She always did that, even after 1 sip. No clutter, no mess. We didn't say good morning. I reached for a banana. She reached for her purse. Our movements choreographed like co-workers in a shared break room. Then, as she headed to the door, she stopped. "I'm not sure what you want me to say," she said quietly without looking at me. I stood there, still holding the banana. "I want you to say what's real," I replied. "Whatever that is, even if I won't like it." She opened the door, hesitated for half a breath, then walked out. No words, just the click of the latch behind her. And that was the moment I realized she doesn't know what's real anymore. And maybe neither do I. There's something nobody tells you about drifting apart. It's not one moment, it's dozens. Little silent failures, questions never asked, doors you stop holding open, smiles that become polite instead of instinctive. And eventually you stop reaching out altogether. Not because you don't care anymore, but because you're afraid to find out they don't. The day after that night, I worked from home. I told my team I had a headache. But the truth was, I didn't want to face the world when I hadn't even figured out what to feel. I opened my laptop, went through emails, answered Slack messages, everything on autopilot. The whole time the house around me felt unfamiliar, like I had stepped into a replica of my life, and every object was slightly off. Dana didn't text. She didn't call. For the first time in 12 years, we went a full day without any contact. And that silence, it was oddly peaceful, which terrified me more than anything she could have said. Around 3 in the afternoon, I got up to stretch and noticed the laundry basket still sitting at the top of the stairs. It had been there for days. I had walked past it 5 times. So had she. We both saw it. Neither of us touched it. That basket somehow became a symbol for everything else. We stopped helping each other, stopped covering for one another, stopped thinking, I'll do it so they don't have to. Instead, we started keeping scores silently. She left the dishes in the sink. I didn't refill the gas. She forgot my mom's birthday. I ignored her promotion celebration dinner. One slide after another. Nothing unforgivable. just enough to push us further and further into parallel lanes, eyes forward, never turning our heads. And now I was standing in a hallway staring at laundry and realizing I couldn't remember the last time I did something for her that didn't feel like a chore, or when she last looked at me like I was someone worth wondering about. Later that evening, I heard her keys in the door. She walked in like nothing had changed, set her bag down, kicked off her shoes, and let out a sigh that said, "Another long day." She looked at me sitting on the couch. I looked back. Nothing was said. And that silence, it didn't feel tense. It felt normal. That scared me most of all. She sat across from me, pulled out her phone, and scrolled like we weren't even in the same room. I watched her screen light up her face and pulses. I remembered a time when we used to sit on this couch and talk for hours about nonsense. About nothing. About everything. Now we had nothing to say. Not because there was no story to tell, but because neither of us wanted to hear it. Eventually she spoke. "I'm thinking of taking a trip, maybe seeing my sister in Oregon." I just nodded. She didn't ask what I thought. I didn't offer it. She wasn't really inviting me, and I wasn't interested in pretending we'd miss each other. That night, we went to bed at the same time, but it felt like we were on different continents. Her back was to me, and I didn't reach for her. She didn't reach for me. I stared at the ceiling again, wondering what it would be like to sleep in a different house. Not because I hated her, not because she wronged me, but because being near her was starting to feel lonelier than being alone. A few nights ago, I watched her fall asleep, not in some romantic movie scene kind of way, just quietly from my side of the bed. Her breathing settled into a soft rhythm, and I realized how unfamiliar that sound had become. For years, it used to calm me. Lately, I barely noticed it. But that night, I listened to it like someone hearing a language they used to speak fluently, but haven't used in years. She looked peaceful. And that's when I knew she was okay. Not happy, not thriving, but okay. She could exist beside me, wake up in the same house, fold the same towels, refill the same cereal containers, and be okay with it. She didn't need passion. She didn't crave connection anymore. She just needed predictability, a routine. And I have become part of that routine, a constant, something reliable. It hit me harder than I expected because somewhere deep down, I had been holding on to the idea that she missed us too, that maybe I wasn't the only one lying awake at night wondering what happened, that maybe, just maybe, she wanted to fix it. But no, she had adjusted. It was me who was still asking questions out loud in an empty room. The next morning, I tried something different. I made breakfast, not just toast and coffee. I actually made the pancakes she used to love, set the table, played the same playlist we used on Sunday mornings when we still danced barefoot in the kitchen. I waited for her to come down the stairs. I waited to see if she'd recognize the effort, if she'd remember something real, something warm. She sat down, picked up the food, nodded a polite thanks, and scrolled through her phone. No questions, no surprise. No curiosity about why I'd gone out of my way for the first time in months. That's when it hit me. She didn't think anything needed fixing. To her, this was the marriage. Predictable, civil, stable. And maybe that's enough for some people, but not for me. Later that day, I watched her through the window as she watered the garden the same way she always did, starting from the far corner, moving slowly, giving each section equal time. Her face calm, her movements measured. It was the same precision I had once admired in her, She didn't waste words. She didn't chase drama. She did what needed doing. But now, watching her like that, I couldn't help but think, is this who we've become? Two people who do what needs doing and call it love. That night, I didn't try to talk. Didn't bring up the reunion again. Didn't ask her how her day went. I think I finally stopped needing her to explain it all because deep down I understood something I'd been avoiding. She never chose someone else. She just stopped choosing me. Every single day. Quietly. Passively. Completely. And I kept showing up like that would be enough. But I think I'm done showing up where I'm no longer really seen. I didn't leave that night. Not physically. I stayed, brushed my teeth, folded the blanket on the couch, turned out the lights. I even kissed her on the temple out of habit before bed. She smiled in her sleep. In that moment, it was quiet, peaceful even, but it didn't make me want to stay. It only confirmed what I'd already accepted. Some things don't break loudly. They dissolve slowly. And sometimes what you miss isn't the person. It's who you were when you were still trying. The next morning, I packed a small bag, just enough for a few days. No grand gesture, no slam doors. I made coffee, left a note, and walked out while she was still upstairs. The note didn't say much, just one line. I'm taking a few days to remember who I am without the quiet. I didn't have a plan. I just drove. I found a small cabin near a lake about 2 hours north. Off-season quiet, but this quiet was different. This one didn't feel like absence. It felt like space, like breath, like mine. The first night alone, I expected to feel lonely, but I didn't. I felt light. I didn't realize how much I'd been carrying until I stepped outside of it. There was no pressure to explain myself, no unspoken tension waiting behind every sentence. I just watched the water ripple in the wind and remembered what it felt like to enjoy my own company. And somewhere between making my own breakfast and falling asleep with a book in my lap, I stopped feeling like someone who had been left behind and started feeling like someone who had left forward. A few days later, she texted me again. "You okay?" This time I replied, "Yeah, I think I actually am." No accusations, no guilt, no longage chain. Just honesty. Quiet, simple honesty. We talked a few times after that. Civil, clear. And when I came back, we had a conversation neither of us had ever been brave enough to have. We didn't argue. We didn't beg. We just told the truth. We had stopped choosing each other a long time ago, and that was okay. There was no dramatic goodbye, no shouting in driveways. Just two people letting go of something that had run its course, not with bitterness, but with respect. And now I wake up early. I run. I write. I call my sister more often. I cook badly, but I try. I laugh at things again. I started learning how to fix old furniture for no reason other than it feels good to give something broken a second life. I don't check my phone waiting for her name to pop up. I don't sit in silence wondering what went wrong. I live. I feel. I grow. She danced with someone else like I was invisible. And for a while I believed I was. But when I finally walked away, I realized I had never disappeared. I had just stopped showing up for myself. Not anymore. Now I show up every single day, and it turns out that's more than